In this video, we're going to go over finding the slope and y-intercept from an equation when the equation we are given is not already in slope-intercept form. This means we're going to have to write our equation into slope-intercept form. To do that, the first thing we're going to need to do is make sure that both sides are simplified. And the left side has no like terms and no parentheses, and the right side has no like terms and no parentheses. So the next step would be to identify our variable. Now, if I want to put the equation into slope-intercept form, all equations that are in slope-intercept form start with y equals. So when I go to identify my variable is going to be the y. Once I've identified the variable, I start looking at what is happening to the variable. Well, this y has a 5 being multiplied with it, and this y has a negative 4x being added with it. So I want to get the y all by itself. So I'm going to solve the equation using inverses. I will do the inverse of whatever is happening to the y. So the question becomes, how do I know what to do first? Well, when solving an equation, you're always going to do the inverse of what you would normally do to simplify an expression. So while in an expression, you might normally do PEMDAS and follow the order of operations, if you are solving for y, you do the opposite. You're going to do or get rid of anything being added or subtracted to your variable first. And since y is our variable, since it is being added with a negative 4x, we will get rid of the negative 4x. So I'm going to do, since it's subtracting and adding, I'm going to do the additive inverse of a negative 4x. The additive inverse of a negative 4x is a positive 4x. We do that because negative 4x plus positive 4x is 0. And then that activates the identity property. You now have 0 plus 5y is 5y. Now there is a rule in mathematics called the equality property. Uses the equal sign. The equality property says whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So if you're going to add a negative 4x on the, or sorry, if you're going to add a 4x on the left, you must add 4x on the right. So we have negative 10 plus 4x. I am going to use the commutative property here a little bit and switch it around and write 4x plus negative 10. 4x minus 10 is the same thing. My equal sign follows down. Now remember, our goal is to get the y by itself. So from the y, I got rid of everything that was being subtracted and added to the y. Now I'm going to look for anything being divided or multiplied. The y has a 5 being multiplied, so we are going to do the inverse of multiplying by 5. We will do 5y divided by 5. Now the reason we do that is because 5 divided by 5 is 1, and that's 1 times y. That is the identity property again. 1 times y is just y. My equal sign is going to follow along. And that equality property that says whatever I do on one side, where I divide it by 5, I have to do the other. So I have to take my 4x minus 10 and divide it by 5. And here I do want to remember how fractions work. So this is the 4x over 5. I'm going to separate the 4x over 5 from the minus 10x over 5 and write them as two separate fractions. I'm allowed to do this because think about when you add fractions. If I was going to add these or subtract these two fractions, you would add or subtract the numerator, 4x minus 10, and your denominator, 5, would stay the same. So you're literally just splitting up the numerator and keeping your denominator. Now the y is all by itself, so we're already mostly in slope-intercept form. I just have to simplify my final answer. So I'll have y equals, and for my first term here, my 4x over 5, I want to write it in slope-intercept form, where I have a number next to the x. So my number is going to be the fraction 4/5 times x. X is technically x over 1. It's still 4 and x in the numerator and 5 in the denominator, but now it's written in slope-intercept form. Please remember that your slope can never be a mixed number. You would write it as a fraction, or you can write it as an integer. And in this case, 4/5 would be a fraction. And then we have minus 10 over 5, and 10 over 5 is 2. So minus 2. That is our equation in slope-intercept form, but we were asked to state the slope and state the y-intercept. So our slope is the number in front of the x, 4/5, and our y-intercept is the number being added, negative 2.